Good afternoon. Welcome to the Workday recap here on the Dev Mentor Dave channel. Good to see you here. If you're watching live, jump in the chat, say hello, join the conversation. Feel free to ask your questions about anything. Here on the Workday recap, we're here for roughly 30 minutes, unless we just get really involved in something like we did yesterday, and end up being way longer than normal. But we're typically here for about 30 minutes from 4 to 4:30 every Monday through Friday, most of the time. Quick programming note: tomorrow I may be a little bit late. I'm gonna still try to come on to the Twitch live stream, but I may be a little bit late. For those of you who don't know, I've been dealing with some back pain over the last several weeks. Tweaked it, cleaning some toilets, believe it or not, and then I ended up I thought I was almost good, and then I had to work on my car and tweaked it some more. So it's been a fun 3 weeks or so. So I'm finally going to go to the chiropractor tomorrow, and that will be before this time, but I'm just not sure how long that's going to take. So just want to make sure you guys know, at least here, know that I will try to get on as soon as I am able to tomorrow. So it might be a little bit later. Hopefully I'll be back in time to to get on at the normal time, but I might be a few minutes late. So just FYI, for those of you who may be sitting around waiting like Mel was, even got a little chat in before I got my own chat on there to pin up. So well done jumping in. Let's see. Welcome, Ming. Grandpa Dave is definitely getting old and broken. So there's that. um, yeah, exactly. Mel says it's always when you think it's almost good that you mess it up again. Yeah, and honestly, my younger son was helping me out, and he actually did a really good job. And he learned a lot, and I did less, but I still tweaked something, and so it's still having some issues with the back. So hopefully we'll get at least a little bit better tomorrow through some chiropractic work. We'll see what happens. Why can't devs just be friendly to ease off the pressure? Is that something? Oh, I see. I had another. Sorry, I missed your first one, Ming. Let's see. Had an interview this morning. It started to feel tense because the two senior devs just didn't know how to break the ice till towards the end. Yeah, I think unfortunately that's a reality of a lot of devs. They don't necessarily have great interpersonal skills. I think that's something that has really changed over the last few years. We're getting a lot more junior devs that are a little bit more well-rounded from a interpersonal skill standpoint. But especially older devs, I don't know how old these devs were, but they can tend, because they're constantly in the world of development and dealing with computers, if they don't have a lot of interaction, especially if they're remote and they don't have a lot of interaction with people in the office or something like that, that's a good reason why office hours may be a good thing. Honestly, it just helps people build their people skills, to where they might be able to handle something like that a little bit better in an interview and break the ice. We generally try to break the ice pretty quick. Mostly just kind of, sometimes it'll be a joke, sometimes it'll be something silly, something self-deprecating about us. One of us will put a joke on somebody else from our company in the middle, at the beginning of the interview or something like that. So we try to break the ice pretty easy, but we have a pretty good group of people who are both technical and I think really good from an interpersonal standpoint. So so that works out pretty well, from my perspective, at least. It seems to have, and we tend to hire people that can reciprocate that as well. I would say that the majority of our employees probably are pretty good interpersonally. So it just may be something that they struggle with in general, and unfortunately, not everybody's good at finding that comment or finding that way of breaking the ice, and they just don't know how to do it very well. So Sometimes you have to kind of be the one to do that, even as the interviewee, kind of break the ice and show them that you're human first before they kind of let their guard down at two. It also can just depend on how much experience they have when it comes to interviewing. Like, I'll be honest with you, it takes some time to get used to interviewing developers and get used to kind of blending that mix between um, being able to talk the technical talk, but also being able to um, have that interpersonal conversation where you're just talking to another human being, and to be able to mix those takes some practice. And it's going to take a while, so you never know, this might have been their first interview that they've ever done. Sometimes people get thrown into an interview without any preparation, and you know so there's lots of different reasons why that could have happened. So I generally just try to give people the benefit of the doubt, and you know I try my best to break the ice ahead of time if I'm in that uh, sort of situation. So I'm just throwing stuff around all over the place here. But yeah. See, Ming says they're more stern at the beginning than towards the end of the interview. I showed enthusiasm for the tech they work on, then they got blank face response. Yeah, my guess is they probably don't do a lot of interviews, to be perfectly honest with you. I think they probably just got thrown into it, and it's just probably isn't something that it's not in their wheelhouse, most likely. And so that's what I would take away from it. Devs who aren't used to doing that, they don't know how to fluff things off or understand when people are just making a joke. Sometimes they're too worried. It could be that they have a lot of things that they have to ask. We have a list of questions that we want to make sure that we ask in our interviews, but we also have a lot of freedom to ask other questions, because we want to ask questions that are relevant to us, especially from a management standpoint, how they're going to interact with us too. So it's a pretty flexible thing, even though there are certain things that need to be asked. And a lot of times, especially if you have interviewers that are not used to it, they probably have a list of things that they're supposed to ask, and they're trying to make sure that they get the answers that they're looking for, and things like that. So there's probably several different things that are happening in that situation that you don't know about, that are making it difficult for them to really let loose. I mean, I've been in enough interviews. I know what we're looking for when we're talking to people, that I don't really like. I don't have to worry about the list. I can just talk to somebody, and I can have that conversation. And if you're new to it, or if you've got a specific, you know, set of questions and process that you have to do, all of that could be playing into why they didn't really feel as conversational as you would like for them to feel. All right, let's see. Mel says, is it a good sign if a company doesn't have people used to doing interviews? I wouldn't say it's bad. Um, Oftentimes, if it's something new to them, it could be that they're just trying to train. Now, hopefully, they would train somebody who knows what they're doing with somebody, but they might just be at a place where they're a startup or they're very new and they just don't have somebody. They might have senior level devs, but they may not have senior level devs that have been in interviews before. That may not have been part of the process, or responsibilities that were given to them when they first started, right? So, and they may have assumed that they would have somebody in HR by the time they needed to start hiring people. There's lots of different reasons why you would potentially have somebody who hasn't done it before. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's a bad sign. It is something to at least consider, right? It is something to, if you went through a recruiter, you might ask the recruiter about, hey, I don't know. They kind of seemed like they didn't really know what they're doing. I wonder if they were kind of new at this, and maybe get some feedback from the recruiter as well. But but I don't know that it's a deal breaker for me. Again, you have some caveats there because I'm going to be coming at it from somebody who's been doing this for, 15 years professionally. So it's for me, kind of even running the interview backwards is something that I could do, right? I could do the interview myself with them, um, if I can tell that they don't know necessarily what they're looking for, or how to do it, right? But somebody who's just coming into it, who's looking at a junior level entry, if unless they're coming in late in life and they've been in a lot of other interviews, they're not going to know how to do that, right? They're not going to know how to necessarily put themselves out there in such a way that that the interviewer is going to get the information that they're looking for. At the end of the day, interviewing is basically selling yourself. So it's kind of comes down to, how do you sell yourself when the other person isn't asking to be sold, right? I think that's part of the question is, how do you then go about saying I am a good fit for your company, or extracting from them whether they're a good fit for you. You kind of at times just have to take over that interview. A lot of times in interviews they'll be like, hey, do you have any questions for us? And that should be an opportunity for you to kind of take over and be the interviewer and them the interviewee. But most of the time people don't really do that. They just kind of try to have a few questions, and it's kind of this weird back and forth where the interviewers try to give enough information ahead of time that the interviewee doesn't really have any normal questions to ask, and the interviewee tries to give as much information as possible so that they don't get as many questions from the interviewers. So it's kind of this weird dance that you have to navigate. So, and because of that, again, I think just because somebody's new at it doesn't necessarily mean that they're bad at the rest of their job, right? That doesn't mean the company's a bad company. It could be that they're just kind of in a situation where they maybe didn't think through who was going to be hiring people, and they're hiring somebody technical, and now they need somebody technical to interview them, and that person has never done it before, and so they're kind of stuck there. One of the things that we'll often do in our company is we have a non-technical CEO or COO. Sorry, our CEO is technical, but our COO is not technical, and he is often in the actual interviews themselves. So he's a sales guy. He's very good at breaking the ice too. So a lot of times he'll be involved in that, and he often is one who will start in and break the ice on things as well. So I think, again, it's unfortunate when that happens because it's really hard for you to know as the interviewee how to interact with them when they're not giving you anything. It's kind of like being a stand-up comedian, right? If nobody's laughing, you can't tell whether what the problem is. And if you don't get a laugh at anything, you have no idea where your material is going to come from at that point. So it's the same. It's a very similar situation when you're interviewing and you don't feel like you're getting any feedback. I've been in a few interviews like that, and I'll be honest with you, the ones that felt that way, I did not. I One of them I did get a call back, but I didn't pursue. But the rest of them that have been like that, usually I didn't get a call back. And I don't know. I mean, I feel like I'm a fairly gregarious person in interviews. I try to be, at least nowadays. So maybe that puts some people off too if they're not used to it. So I don't know, Mel. I wouldn't say that it's necessarily a bad thing if it feels like they don't necessarily know the best ways to interview. Another thing to keep in mind with that is I would be more concerned if there are multiple steps in that process and all of those steps feel like they're not organized well, like they don't know what they're doing with them, like they're just kind of going through multiple steps to try to figure out what they want to do, right? So to me, it'd be more of an issue, less of an issue of a specific interview and more of an issue of if I'm seeing things that seem to be maybe a little incompetent along the way multiple times in the process, then that might concern me more than just an interview with somebody that doesn't seem like they really do it very often. So that would be my take on it. See, Ming says, I love it when they ask me what I like to do outside of dev work. I broke the ice by flexing out my taekwondo skills. That's awesome. Uh, I was thinking, yeah, you better take me to the next round, or else I'll sort you devs out. Threats probably not the best thing in an interview. I don't. I know you didn't really do it, but that's funny. Oh, now see, Ming, why did you have to use the words way back? Like, I understand you're calling me Grandpa Dave, but I mean, way back. Do we really have to go there? Ming says, what was a junior role like way back in your time compared to now? That's a really good question. I don't. Hmm. I would say this. The biggest difference between what a junior dev role was like back then and now is the amount of things that you had to know. Shh. Enough of that. Enough of that, Mel. Way, way, way back. Dan, quit laughing. That's not funny. You're old like me too. So, back in my day, no. So I would say that biggest difference is what you have to know to get into an actual job. So back when I was, let's say 10 years ago, right? Even just 10 years ago, I had a junior dev come in and they were hired. I don't know what they actually knew. I think they kind of knew some jQuery. Um, they certainly didn't seem to know the front end framework we were using, which was Angular. Um, it was very, very limited. Now, again, it's kind of hard because this junior dev had a sibling who had worked at the company before, so you never know if maybe there's some, nostalgia or nepotism or things like that. And he didn't last very long. I'll be honest with you there. So, but I think you used to be able to get in the door with a lot less things. Nowadays, I mean, you've got to know um, repositories. You've got to know. Sometimes Ming was talking about CI/CD processes. You've got to know HTML, CSS, JavaScript. You've got to know probably a JavaScript front end framework, most likely React. You've got to have probably some experience dealing with back end endpoints, potentially even writing some back end with Node, JavaScript on the back end, right? So there you have to probably know something about databases, probably like a NoSQL database, if not an actual like SQL database. There's so much more that you have to know now in order to get a job as a junior developer than you had to know back then. And I think part of it's because there's more opportunities to learn that stuff. There's more opportunities to be trained in those things than there were back then. So people kind of assumed you would have to learn a bunch of stuff on the job. Whereas now, unfortunately, people kind of assume that you have learned that stuff through a boot camp or through college or things like that. And I think the problem is the assumption of what is being taught is not always accurate to what's being caught, right? So even the things that they try to teach are not necessarily things that the majority of people who get a certificate have actually imbibed and actually put into practice, right? And so I think that's the big difference. There were lower expectations because we understood most people didn't have access to uh, the time and the training that is available now. Now there's higher expectations because there's more access, even just through YouTube. I mean, when I really first started learning to code, YouTube was not, it was around, but it wasn't what it is today with all of the different channels to go to and find tutorials on almost anything that you want to figure out, right? So there's just such ubiquity of training and access. I think that makes the requirements and the expectations so much higher nowadays for junior devs trying to break into the market. That's why, again, I keep coming back to this concept. I know people are probably tired of hearing of it, but I keep coming back to this concept of trying to find another way to break into being a developer full time. Instead of trying to break into the development industry, try to find a way to break into being a developer full time. Those are two different things, right? Being part of the developer industry, the development industry, that is kind of its own world, and that's working for a specific development company. That's, you know, being paid a lot of times to work on other people's projects, things like that. That's what we kind of think of when we think of the industry of web application development or website development or things like that, right? You know, I'm gonna next in a couple weeks. I'm gonna be gone to Laracon. That industry is different than finding a job at a company that is not an actual development company and creating a development job within that company. I still firmly believe that that is the best direction, and I've even started trying to lay out what would that look at if I could put together a company or a nonprofit or something like that to help businesses understand the the opportunity that is there for them now with AI, not just AI doing stuff, but AI with junior developers or mid-level developers or even senior level developers to hire them into their organization where they don't normally have developers, but they can benefit from that. Like I'm thinking about this really hard. I think there's an opportunity there, but I've got to be able to position it well so people understand what that might look like and how that might work, because I think that's really going to be a key in the years to come for all of these developers that don't have a traditional development industry job to have still a development job, and maybe even begin to build their own development team at some of these companies, because let's just be honest, a lot of companies needs fairly significant software, and there's only, you know, a certain number of good quality, you know, development shops out there, and they're not all in positions to hire all the people who are getting let go, right? So I really truly believe that's the direction that the developer community needs to go, and I just don't think people are good at explaining how that's going to work. I'm not even good at explaining how it's going to work, and that's what I'm working on. So there you go. um, Mel says, are junior devs expected to know operating systems in order to set up things like version control frameworks, or are they expected to ask for help with that? I think today, probably yes. Today, people are pretty much, there's an expectation that you learned how to set up repositories when you went through boot camp or whatever training that you went through. If you're completely self-taught like I was, then there might be less expectation, especially if you explain that. That there might be things that you don't know that are standard because you didn't go through any sort of boot camp or something like that. So that may be something that I would recommend you bring out in your in your interview, just so that they know that there might be some things that are a little bit different about uh, how your knowledge has grown over time versus versus the average person who went through something like a boot camp or something like that. Ming says, way back when my friend came out of boot camp 2014, he was just working on HTML and CSS for a year and then slowly worked JS, HTML, CSS on his second job, then later moved on to PHP. Yeah, I mean that's how most of us did it. It was HTML, CSS, then you started learning JavaScript, right? And maybe you learned that before you got a job, maybe you learned it after you got a job. So, I mean, that's very true. Dan says, I think one of the big changes from when I started is that I started out looking for web development jobs, which really was websites. Yeah, absolutely agree. Now it usually means creating web applications, and those are extremely different things, although they have some overlapping skills. Absolutely agree with that, Dan. Definitely was more about websites back when I first started. I mean, I've already told you guys I was building WordPress websites back when I got my first real job. Now, it is interesting, even though I had done some website work for my brother, the first big thing that I did was actually a web application. So that was a little kind of bucking the norm there. But yeah, I mean, most of my initial work was websites, right? And then moved into web applications. I prefer web applications much more than websites because I like all the technical stuff and all the verbosity that is there in an application. Just speaks to me more. But yeah, I totally agree. It started with web development as websites, and then moved on to applications over time. And now we expect people to just kind of jump in to web applications, and there's a lot that goes into that. There's a lot that Dan and I had to learn along the way to get to the point where applications made sense, you know? So I think that's something to take into account as well. Let's see. Mel says, I was watching the binmen collect street bins and wondering if they had software that created heat maps to determine which bins needed collecting more often. It's crazy how software can be used in any job. That is absolutely true, Mel. So one of the things that I love about working in this industry, especially if you work for a company like the one that I work for, where we don't have our own product, we do products for other people, right? You are always getting introduced to some new industry that you never would have even thought about, right? So like you never would have necessarily thought about, this manufacturing plant that builds these types of widgets. Like you wouldn't even think about necessarily the software that they would need for that. We've had multiple manufacturing clients, that we've had to build software for. And it's cool because as the software developer, even if you're not like the lead or the director or whoever, or the PM or the BA or somebody like that that's going to be interacting with the client and asking them questions and really getting to know their industry, even just as a dev working tickets, as you try to understand the project you're working on, you try to understand how your tickets fit within that project, you learn about interesting industries. You learn new things about those industries that you never would have guessed. Uh, excuse me. I've written software for insurance agencies. I've written software for manufacturing plants. I've written software for a lot of CRMs. But every CRM has to have something different that they want built into it. Different types of apps, different types of purposes for an app. There's so many things in our lives that are run by software, and unfortunately a lot of them that are run by really, really old software that needs to be updated, if for nothing else than just to update workflows and things like that. So it really is amazing how much of our life is managed by software. But then also, being in this industry, you begin to think, kind of like what you were just saying, Mel. I wonder how technology could make that better. I wonder how technology could make that easier. And now in the age of AI, I wonder how AI and interacting with AI can help them do XYZ better and faster and easier and cheaper. If cheaper is a thing, I don't know. I don't know if cheaper is the thing with AI, quite frankly, but there you go. So absolutely, I completely agree. Um, Ming says, yeah, nonprofits is the best way forward. At some point, I'm going to create a church community to train junior devs. I know the exact process and step to go through from beginner to being hired. Yeah, the hard thing with nonprofit is being able to live off of it. Because I've talked about potentially doing a nonprofit before, but in the United States, one good thing about nonprofits is they can pay usually commensurate to what somebody would making at the same or similar job in a for-profit company. The problem is, where's the income going to come from? And that's the hard thing for me. Is I'm not a salesperson, so I would have a hard time going out there probably and finding donations. I've talked about other realities, setting up a 501c3 for training developers and having, current developers, donating to like $5 a month or something like that. But that all sounds good in theory, but you've got to really have people who understand the issue, who agree with the issue, and have the money to help you do it, right? And that's the hard thing. It really does. Yeah, exactly. Ming says something I hear about a lot about nonprofits is how much it costs to actually give something away. It does. It takes time, it takes money, it takes effort. Um, those things that are free, that are offered free, they cost something. and and that's something that we have to be aware of, and that money has to come from somewhere. So that's why, while that would be kind of something I would love to do, it's figuring out how that would work would be very difficult unless you could get some people with very, very deep pockets, um, to help fund that, right? So I would love for something to just be a nonprofit, but I also have to make sure if I'm spending all of my time on it, my family eats a lot, and so you've got to provide for your family. You've got to make sure that you're providing for others. Not everything can be 100% um, volunteer too. So there's that aspect of it. You've got expenses. Anything that you're going to do with technology, you're going to have expenses there. Um, so there's just a lot that goes into some sort of charitable organization. So Dan says, you want to eat? How dare you? Well, I do like fasting as a diet exercise, but let's just say I don't do it as often as I probably should. There's a reason why the camera's about here and up, right? Nobody wants to see that. Oh my. Let's see. There's one more thing here that somebody said. Oh, Ming. When my React Native friend started, he said there was a lot of investments for training, hence why it was way less competitive. Now it's oversaturated and not much funding. Now businesses are always trying to get a bang for their buck at a lower salary. Times have changed. Yeah, I mean that's everybody wants more for less. I mean, we do that as consumers, so I don't blame anybody for that. I don't look down on anybody for that. It's just a reality of life, So we have to realize that. So anyway, yeah, Dan says nonprofits are hard to start. Doing the normal LLC is so much less restriction. Yeah, there's a lot of reporting that goes into nonprofits. Believe me, I've done a lot of research on it in the past because I really considered doing it. Actually, potentially setting one up with my brother years ago. So we did a lot of research at the time, and it didn't make sense. I think in order to start a nonprofit, you have to have some good connections with some good funding. To get it started off with a bang. Now anybody can start a nonprofit and just do little things here and there. That's nothing wrong with that. But if you have a big vision for something that would totally shake up an industry like what I'm talking about, you're probably going to be needing some deeper pockets for something like that. So there you go. Now what I got to do, guys, is try to figure out how in the world I'm going to concatenate what we talked about today into a pithy thumbnail for YouTube. If anybody has any ideas, shoot them over to me. Is nonprofit an American term? I don't know. That's a great question. Is non-profit an American term? Let's ask the great Claude. Oh, great Claude. Isn't exclusively American. You should know this, Mel. United Kingdom and many Commonwealth countries. Oh, they use charity or charitable organization. Okay. That's the idea. Nonprofit is just the United States term or even Australian term, not for profit. Canada uses nonprofit, not for profit. There's different European Union Association, Verein, Association, things like that. So I guess it's not, the concept isn't distinct, but maybe the wording is a little bit. So typically nonprofit doesn't mean that. So here's the other fun fact. Nonprofit doesn't mean it can't make a profit, right? The point is that the goal or the purpose of it is not to make a profit like a normal business is. So yeah, charitable organization is basically the same thing. The goal is to be charitable. In order to get 501c3 or other charitable organization statuses with the IRS so that you don't have to pay taxes or that your taxes can be mitigated in some way, you have to prove that you are charitable, right? And that's really more the idea. The idea is that your goal is to be charitable, not to make a profit. If you make a profit, great. There are rules about how you have to handle that profit. So again, lots of stuff involved in that from a paperwork standpoint, but there you go. Ming says the thumbnail should be devs need to be friendly interviewers. That's awesome. Dan says Australia, they generally said not for profit company. Yeah. Yeah. And you'll see not for profit here in the United States as well. Non-profit's just kind of a shortening of that. Mel says that's what I'm finding. That's something I'm finding when looking at volunteer work. The organizations make a lot of money and get low tax, but if the cause is worth it, yeah. The other issues there too is our just because a CEO can legally be allowed to be paid like a CEO of a for-profit, should they for a non-profit, not-for-profit charitable organization? I don't know. Depends on what they're doing. Probably not, but I don't know. There's lots of things that we can converse about that, but unfortunately, our time is up for today. So thanks for jumping in, guys, on I'm Not Staying Extra. Yeah, right now, the Dev Mentor Dave YouTube channel is not for profit. Technically, I am, what is that? What's monetized? I am monetized, but let's just say there has not been any checks. I have not received any checks from YouTube. So that was not a request or anything. I'm just being honest here. It's not for profit at the moment. So, and I don't necessarily think that it will be. I may never even get a first check. We'll see. But that's good times. Anyway, thanks for jumping on here, guys. Repentance for what? What did I do, man? I don't know. I don't know what I did. Anyway, thanks for jumping on. Thanks for jumping in the chat and chatting with me today. I really appreciate it. Makes it so much easier to interact with people rather than just talk about things that, once again, I have a topic that I have not gotten to for a couple of days now. Well done. Well played, everyone. But no, that's the point of being on here, is to interact with you guys. So I appreciate it when you interact with me. Thanks for joining me live. If you're watching this again later on YouTube, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you're not subscribed on YouTube. If you're not on Twitch, go to Twitch, create an account, hit the follower button on the Dev Mentor Dave channel on Twitch. We are trying to get to 10 I'd love to get to 10 followers by the end of July. That would be awesome. And then we'll push for 50, which apparently 50 means something on Twitch. I don't know. I need to do some research. But if you're watching this later, leave a comment in the YouTube channel and leave a question. I try to answer those. I try to see them all, first of all, and answer them either there or answer them on another live stream like this one. We're here typically every Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. Central United States time on the I just forgot the title for my own program. My Workday recap. Workday recap on here. So I know, Ming, I know they need to be an hour, but I'm trying to have a little bit shorter content to put on YouTube so people don't panic when they see a 2-hour live stream or video. So there you go. I don't know. I'll figure something out eventually, but yeah, honestly, mostly it's to try to be consistent with you guys so that I'm going to be here and that I'm going to be faithful and consistent to help you guys out any way I can. So join us again tomorrow. I might be a few minutes late tomorrow, depending on how things go at the chiropractor, but I will update you when I return. So have a great afternoon. I will see you guys tomorrow at some point. So bye.